Let's thank Pam again and the Venture Center squad for bringing us together. My team, Think Rubix, we're mostly on the fourth floor. Those who are based in Arkansas, the rest of the team is all over the place, all over the country and the world. So it's great to be all the way up on the sixth floor here in the Tech Park building. As has been shared, my name is Tristan Wilkerson. I lead a public affairs firm called Think Rubix. We were founded in 2017. Let's see, here we go. Oh, where's our logo? Shame on us.
Oh, here's one right
there
here.
We go. This is our work. We were founded way back in 2017, years ago, and we came to this space understanding that in order for us to really do good work from our own perch, we had to organize ourselves. And so some entrepreneurs and myself got together. We had all been working on Capitol Hill and had done some work in the policy space and had done some work with movement and grassroots organizations. And we understood that we could be disruptive in the public affairs space and help lead to better policies, which create quality of life, better quality of life, and equitable solutions for our communities. And so that's what we are. We are a public affairs firm. Our strengths are in diversity, and we help our partners create equitable solutions that improve people's lives. And we're quite excited to be with you all today, to have one of our clients with us, AgLaunch out of Memphis, Tennessee, which you all will learn a lot more about here in a second. And we're gonna have a conversation about what our entrepreneurship means in the spirit of social innovation, what our work together looks like, and hopefully try to inspire some folks with Pete's incredible story about how he formed AgLaunch and what it does and how it's impacting folks' lives. So with that, let's just quickly go through. We got a couple of slides here. And before I dig into this, if you're on the TR team, can you wave your hand? Woo!
Yeah.
The squad is in the house. So if I don't say something that you have a question about, there are 10 other people way smarter than me who can answer that question for you. All right, so Think Rubix, culture first public affairs firm. We practice social innovation. That's the change-making spirit we approach our work with. And we like to think of social innovation in the most simplest terms is about change. So touch your neighbor and say change. Touch your neighbor with consent and say change. So that change-making work for us is why we're here today. All right, what is Think Rubix composed of? We've got 3 studios that help us actually drive and create the change-making strategies that we participate in. That's our Equity Innovation Studio. Equity Innovation is a term that we've created to help us understand and appreciate how we design that change, right? Not design in the graphic design sense, but design in the systems change sense. All right, so led by Dr. Pierce Gordon, our Equity Innovation Studio takes all the thinking around diversity, equity, inclusion, takes all the wicked problems of systems change and the difficulties in creating system change. And we work with our folks to really think about, if we start with the end in mind, how can we recreate systems to get outcomes that include folks on the margins? That's the core of the philosophy in our Equity Innovation Studio, where all of our research and design work happens. Our public engagement studio is really the heart of the firm. Rona Rosa Kama-Makia here with us today leads that space. And for us, engagement is all about bringing folks from the margins into the middle. Most public affairs firms lobby, raise money, and they wield influence with influencers. Well, we say the power lies with people, and the influence is there because the outcomes have the greatest impact among our people. And we understand people in all of the senses, as voters, as consumers, as parents, as children, as educators, as laborers, as workers, as union workers and non-union workers. We understand the role that people play in their day-to-day lives. And because we do that, we can represent those interests with power. That way we're shifting power to create systems that are actually far more equitable. So at the root of that work is Rona's leadership and helping us drive that kind of change. And of course, we all know that, most of us have learned, I think, because we've all gone through preschool and K through school, that we learn best from stories, right? We would sing a song and that's how you learn your ABCs. And we tell other stories and it's how you learn about how to move in the world. Our storytelling studio helps us tell the story to make sure that we're driving the change. So much of folks' understanding about issues, come from the narrative that is told to them. And so without our storytelling studio, we certainly wouldn't be able to build these sort of campaigns to reach people where they are. And so this makes up our social innovation practice as a public affairs firm. And I appreciate y'all letting me get through all of that. Okay, let me turn it over to the man of the hour, Pete, to talk a bit more about AgLaunch.
Good. Well, anytime I'm talking, I always say, especially to a new group, we will either be lifelong friends or we may not get invited back. It's rare that I come into a group that we already have like a partner in the building. So I want to be super cautious here. When I walked in and I saw the sign "Innovation Happens Here," I kind of rolled my eyes because there's buildings like this all over the place that either don't have much happening or have a little bit happening that is over exalted and not actually real, which doesn't do service to all of us. Now, when I'm kind of feeling the energy here, which makes me really comfortable, and you're saying people first, I think we all know, I mean, that's where it actually comes from. And we've kind of all have swallowed this myth of like, if you build the right fund and the right system and that stuff, it happens here or somewhere drinking beer in the early days at Grateful Dead shows, and everybody was on acid and they're like, we should connect the world, man. And like, then the internet comes when they get the money from DARPA and all that. So I like, this feels good to be here. I'm going to try to be a little careful about what I say. I'm not a corporate innovation person. Generally, I don't really like big companies, especially in our ag space. So I will say it that way without naming any names because we're on tape or what that might like work. But what we essentially are in its current state, but this is evolving. And that's why, again, I think hopefully this is lifetime friends here. Mm-hmm. I know we are TR and AgLaunch at this point space to figure out how this works. The people part is crucial, even if you didn't care about all the things that we're supposed to care about now, equity, inclusion, all those things, which are fundamentally ethically and morally, but like it's an imperative. We have global problems we're trying to solve that will not get solved without everybody at the table and the bright minds that are going to come from resilience, hard places, not out of the Ivy Leagues. That's the reality of the world. And so what AgLaunch is, we have a nonprofit. That's what allows us to bring public money in, federal government money, state government money to support innovation. And then we have a for-profit partner that is a group of farmers. So there's about, in this agriculture space, which I'm a geek about, you guys don't have to be, but like just time me out if I get you too far into the geek part of it. But in the ag space, I think there's 90 sort of accelerator programs that do this work. To my knowledge, and we look around, we're the only one that's not corporate backed, meaning we're not, don't have an allegiance to go into Bayer or to Cargill or ADM, which I said I wouldn't list by name. And they're the good ones, there's other bad, whatever. But what we are is a platform where our farmers are the ones that drive the innovation. They're the ones who pick the products, pick what we invest in, how we work with them, and they take equity. They take actual ownership in innovative companies. On the nonprofit side, we fund that by going after money from the federal government and all those things. We have an audacious goal in agriculture that we believe, and I'm not even going to use the D word, but for a variety of reasons, it is a industry that is in peril, that is kind of revolving around some very non-sustainable long-term business models. And so we're trying to blow that up and rebuild it kind of with three ways. I try to come up with some clip, but nutrient dense food, where we're measuring food not based on a commodity and ability to trade, but by the density. Carbon negative, where farms are actually going the opposite direction we do now. And probably the most important to us, the ownership being equitable, that everybody in the value chain has a piece of it. So that's what we're all about. In all humbleness. We talked about this, 10, 15 years ago. It was like, this is batshit crazy. As it's evolved, and I was asking y'all's numbers, which are great. We're at like about 30 companies, 100 million raised in those companies. So it's not, you guys are knocking the park out here with some of the fintech. What are some of the other stats? We got like about $1.5 million from the state and have parlayed that into about 10 times as much on the programming side. So at least the story isn't, you guys are crazy, but you're sort of crazy, but there's some stuff starting to happen out of it. Probably our biggest success from a company perspective is the first drone company to be able to use imagery, which there's 1,000 doing that in ag, pinpoint a problem in the field, but spot spray an herbicide or some other intervention in the field. And to do that swarm and to do that across the country came out of our program. So if you think about it, it's astonishing. No big company was involved. It was farmers and the technologists building a solution and moving it into market. What's kind of cool on the for-profit side, and I didn't realize Hallie was in this room. Does everybody know Hallie Schaffner? I'm sorry to put you on the spot. Hallie's one of our farmer partners. She runs a seed company in Arkansas. She has your office in this building too, which I didn't realize until she saw my picture there, so that's great. But there are 36 core members, the Delta region into Arkansas, the Midwest, the Northwest are the key. And what's unique about our group of farmers, we are 38% women and minority, which is rare in ag to begin with, but kind of even beyond the story of color, gender, and all that is the fact that like we have where my office is, a small aquaponics farm. We have even the first organic farm in Tennessee is in the group, which is a learning farm for kids in the middle of inner city Memphis. And we have groups like Hallie that are innovative and thinking about climate change and some of the biggest farms in Delta. What's in common and what I like about this group, without putting any of y'all on the spot to tell your story, is that everybody's an outlier. There's a reason they don't fit in other groups, whether they're a big cotton farmer or a small aquaponic. Like they fit with us because we're the crazy people with audacious thing of doing something crazy and new. They don't kind of fit other places. And so we do things that you just couldn't imagine, like you aren't, but if you read the newspaper, organic is one thing, big ag's this thing, animal, non-animal, you got all these divisions. We got a group that like, for whatever reason is able to work together. And what we're seeing is our ability to pick pre-revenue companies is better that way because it's all about the people and it's all about the vibe of, do you feel about, or you see it, can we work together? And so it looks like at the beginning stage that we're doing way better. I know, for example, our companies, anybody that's should get funded is getting $1 million within 6 weeks after they get out. And so like it's moving, it's starting to happen. So that's a little bit probably more than we needed. That's a little bit to get started. I'd love to talk more about that. What are my other questions? I can't, I'm looking at
that was perfect.
I want to say for you guys, y'all did a great job here at the Venture Center and TR getting me everything I needed. I just, let's see.
We're
what
going
else?
to talk a lot more about AgLaunch. So that
do we have a video? Yeah,
we do. You want to
Okay.
play the video?
So
So Pete's team just went through a rebrand, and they got this super fancy video, which we're going to play. That'll give you a bit more information about AgLaunch and what they're doing. And then we'll go into story time about how TR and AgLaunch came into partnership. So I'll take
why that's coming up. I will make the case real quick why this is the time in agriculture that we can blow it up and rebuild it. One, consumers. When we first started talking about this back in the day, it was like organic was a small thing. You can go into any rural Walmart, Podunk, anywhere and find 20 food products that you didn't know what they were 10 years ago. Try it. I kept saying that and I was like, oh, I should go try this. It actually is true. So try that. That means the train has left the station, that people will buy things that are different, not just corn or soybeans, and that's what they want. The other is lower technology costs. We're an innovation center, but we know the ability to build an autonomous vehicle or these other disruptive kind of ideas, the ability to do that is just fundamentally different. And then the third one is especially exacerbated by COVID and supply chain issues. The whole industry is realigning itself. So whether it's looking at an indoor ag operation sitting next to a Kroger warehouse or aquaponics or funky new crops, all of that, it's in play. And so if you are looking for an industry to operate in, it is a interesting, fast moving one right now.
So I'm sure not everyone expected to get such a deep lesson in
my bad.
Technology, but it gets even better. And there's in the story time, I think we're going to get a chance to appreciate just the vast and depth of knowledge that Pete has around this space. But for now, let's hear from his colleague Jade right here on the screen. I think this is the right button. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Y'all seemed so buttoned up when I got here. I'm glad that this is like an AgLaunch thing for the sound not to work. I have to mess around for a minute. I hope we didn't bring that with us. Thank you.
Well, lucky for us, we're in the tech park, so we got lots of folks that can fix the technology.
Okay. No, you're good.
All good.
You want to chat about anything?
Yeah, we can. So while we're getting that together, can you tell us who's on the screen here? Because that's going to help intro how we came to be.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So Jade Clark, she's executive within our organization. There's 11 of us now, not huge, but sort of growing. We now have sort of people like Jade chasing us in terms of talented people. She grew up in Memphis, went to school, was going to go into pharmacy, and because of a minority scholarship, they brought her over and talked her into doing food science in the ag group because she'd get a full ride. So she's like, all right, I'll do this for my sciences and I'll move on, and got really interested in food and nutrition. So she spent over a decade working for Coke and big food companies, and then was like, okay, I'm done with this environment. I'm gonna go back to Memphis. She started a nonprofit focused on
to improve yield and market and sell crops.
There we go. We're getting some sound. So y'all are gonna get to hear from Jade. Jade is the person who
connected us,
brought us together. So this is timely that you'll get to hear from the person who made this all happen.
Farming requires an unparalleled commitment to continue every season in order to provide for a family, a piece of ground, and the greater community. Currently, agriculture relies heavily on antiquated strategies to improve yields and market and sell crops. However, these techniques tend to favor large agribusinesses over the interests of the farmer. There's a new future in front of us, one where agriculture transforms the health and wealth of farmers, the soil, and surrounding communities. A future driven by relationships and enabled by technology. A future that includes artificial intelligence and new markets leveraging blockchain. AgLaunch builds networks of farmers that work together to drive innovation and create new economic opportunities. Our farmers support new ag tech startups, conduct field trials, control their own data, and drive investment in new companies. These new companies are pioneering tools for soil health, water management, labor shortages, and resistant weeds. At the heart of this work is a simple idea. Farmers are the key to innovation, and because of that, they should get a direct benefit from it. AgLaunch has connected countless innovators from around the world and within our own communities with farmers to create new products and ideas. We also work directly with farmers on value-added projects, new crop trials, and alternative production models to improve sustainability and create local opportunity. Using AgLaunch's model, meaningful solutions will be built. Farmers will share in the profits, and a new pathway will be established to make agriculture more healthy, sustainable, and diverse. Please join us in building a farmer-owned bridge to the future and the next big thing in agriculture.
Awesome, thank you. I'm really glad that you all had a chance to hear from Jade, sort of just what the AgLaunch pitch is and who AgLaunch is serving. So I want to share with you that they've been at this for some time, AgLaunch has, and Pete will share more about just that. But the way that we came together, we've got some mutual friends, Jade and I do. And I think Jade was just having a conversation, perhaps over drinks or dinner, and said, our team needs some folks who can help us move people, to engage people, to make sure that we're serving the right folks, to make sure that we are engaging women and farmers of color, to make sure that what we're doing and what we're saying we're doing is actually happening in material ways in our work. And so her friend, my friend as well, said, I think we know just the folks. Y'all should talk to Think Rubix. And so we got on the phone, and it was supposed to be a 30-minute conversation. It turned into 90 minutes of just like really, and y'all know those conversations, right? It's like, we're way over time, but this is great. And we could tell that the synergy was ripe. And so that was the initial conversation that got us to the door. But it's interesting because the problems with AgLaunch had nothing to do with the services that you're offering or the fact that you weren't able to raise money. Like, you've done really well in those ways. The challenge in a lot of ways is the industry and the ways in which food insecurity, the ways in which food production, it's really the system, right? You are having a tough time, I think, figuring out exactly how to disrupt the existing system in ways that had outcomes that actually improve the quality of life for your farmers and for the public in general. And so that's really around the scope of work that we came into. TR does a lot of different things, TR being Think Rubix. But in our engagement work, this notion of moving people and organizing folks and building coalitions and creating campaigns to reach people, that was where we started our work, which has translated into a few different things. So we're going to talk about what we do together. There we go. So TR and AgLaunch, this is what our initial work was. We came in, we said, Pete, we're going to have to take a good look at you. It's like when you go to the doctor and they say, well, we've got to run some tests to figure out what's going on. We call that our landscape analysis. We performed a landscape analysis to really figure out where were the root of the challenges in your reaching people and engaging the right folks to make sure that your mission was matching the outcomes of your work. We learned a lot in that process. I'll let you talk about it. And I want to give you kudos because, you know, when a lot of us have probably bought a car or bought a house and you've been underwritten for a loan and they ask you all kinds of questions to get at who you are and your credit worthiness. You get scoped really, right? And it can be a little uncomfortable. Well, Pete allowed us to come in and do that to AgLaunch. And you responded in ways I think are exemplary in your leadership. And we've been able since to take some of those findings and start to work them through your firm. And it's been helpful, I think, for us to work with you. But I want you to talk a little bit about what that process was like, what your takeaways were from having someone outside in take a look at the outcomes of your mission work and ways that you appreciated or have appreciated the ways in which you've been working together. So I'll let you share a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, and I'm gonna start by going, any of us that are entrepreneurs in the room, if we haven't figured this out, you sure better be willing to get 360s done. Everybody knows what that is. Be willing to have people dig under, because somebody's going to do it and they're going to keep doing it. And if you're successful, it'll be in the newspaper and all kinds of stuff. So being vulnerable, fundamental is a fundamental thing. And I've realized that even with my employees, I've got such that's not that hard to me. I really want all this stuff to work. So I'm going to show you anything, talk about anything. So you guys did TR did an unbelievable good job interviewing, talking to staff. What made me uncomfortable, even as a leader, was my own inadequacy a little bit at realizing even my own staff a lot of times didn't fully understand what we're doing, how the pieces go together. So somebody's running an accelerator, somebody's running a fund, somebody's in but I don't really care about those things. To what end? Those are just the tools. How do the tools all go together? And I think y'all exposed that very early. One. The other thing y'all exposed early that actually brought me a little bit of shame and frustration was, this whole DEI thing is a network. You have to be connected in and have to have a realization that every other tribe, not just white guys, has a tribe. And if you want to be in it, go drink some beer, get to know people and actually be in it. Out of that comes recruitment. So what we ended up doing as we were growing was I overhired quickly on technical people. My technical ability, I'm a thinker. My technical ability is not on any of these things. I'm totally held hostage by, as we build, finding an expert in each area. And so they exposed some of the shortcuts where we hired more quickly. We did all the right things in terms of, we went through manners and we did all and had different diverse candidates. But I was so if this drone thing doesn't work, the rest of my model falls apart. For the good of the cause, we just got to go forward. And even from a faith perspective, that was a little bit of lack of trust. That was the biggest thing recently I've realized for me. I've operated in, I got to figure it out. Let's make it happen. Let's hire, not we're building into something that God's already created and I can just ride in that with a little bit of peace. And so you guys kind of check that one for me a little bit of going, let's slow down. And so there's a lot of those good learnings, but what that led beyond the learnings was relationship and starting to trust each other to speak truth into what we were doing and to think about it and to allow us to be refined by that. And that's what I will say. It sounds probably good to have a TR commercial, but the commercial for us has been, we're now figuring out how to move forward beyond just here, fee for service, do an assessment, give us some recommendations, but how do we really think about the people, what innovation means, all these buzzwords we use to create something amazing and beautiful and good. There's probably a lot more there, but I'll stop there for a second. I hope that's
perfect. So imagine, we hear from Jade, who's been leading your diversity work, and she's frustrated because AgLaunch's mission, purpose, is to create equitable outcomes, to engage in folks from diverse backgrounds, and struggling to really meet those benchmarks. So here we are working together to really figure out what that looks like. How do we engage folks? And so we go from there, and you just mentioned, it's not just knowing the problem, but actually doing the work to create solutions and to change behavior so that the actual organization all across the board is now dialed in on this is what we're doing and this is the desired outcome. So every resource, every amount of energy, every conversation is being directed into how do we create this outcome. And that is what we worked on in our engagement strategy. And we're still actually working through quite a bit.
Can I make another, because one
do.
thing you exposed that I would have thought I was a little bit more savvy than sort of, I mean, the easiest way to say it, to cut to the chase, is like the savior syndrome, like I'm fixing something or whatever. So what you'll notice on my board, which is extremely diverse and everything, but you'll notice you saved all this game about farmers, but you don't have any farmers on the board. Well, why is that? The reason is because we're a public-private partnership. So me and my staff voluntarily, you know, we're on the nonprofit side. We're bringing federal government money in to stimulate entrepreneurship. We don't take corporate money. That makes us vulnerable to make sure we manage all the conflicts and everything. So we've always had the farmer, they're the ones we're throwing over the wall to. So the core staff is in service to the equity model of which we don't share. Is everybody tracking with me? I'm nerding out. Everybody tracking with me? So a blind spot for me was I was making a decision for our Black farmers. And I think you guys discovered, we actually had good numbers on the board on the nonprofit and on the farmer side through a long relationship we've had for 15 years with the National Black Growers Council. We didn't have it on the staff. So Jade is stuck feeling vulnerable and feeling like doesn't feel like a safe place, whatever. And what I was doing was I wasn't giving a choice as I was giving to the people that look like me. Come join us. We're higher up in terms of our legacy and we got more resources. So we can afford to be on the nonprofit side and take the hit so that the people on the other side, and they're not, I mean, there's some rich farmers, small farmers, but we were making that choice. And so that's one of the big revelations for me was don't get too fast on getting your technology people without really thinking what you're doing. Just trust that God's got the timing and don't make the choice for people. Give folks an opportunity to come in on both sides better and be more open to that and me not make that decision. And I've been so used to going farmers, the people that we're trying to make money for can't be on the nonprofit staff because then they can't take a cut, that I wasn't giving people a choice. And so now we're sort of remedying that by just, you guys are helping us by your culture and everything, which are people that are trying to serve the public and are trying to do. So anyway, that's another sort of big thing that jumped out.
I hope for the entrepreneurs in the room, we're sort of picking up what Pete's putting down here. It's been a joy working with you. You don't find often leaders and organizations being open to change, right? They may say you want a different outcome, but you're not willing to do things differently. And we say it here all the time, to get different outcomes, sometimes you gotta do things differently. So think different, think Rubix, plug in right there. But kudos to you, Pete, for having that openness. And so what that has allowed us to do is with our engagement acumen, and frankly, I'll just be honest, we represent a lot of what it is we do. The team that we have is diverse. And I love to tell folks that we're the most diverse public affairs firm in the state of Arkansas. And the truth is that in many other places where we are, in DC or in San Francisco or in Alabama, we're also still one of the more diverse firms. We're younger. We give folks a chance who, you know, would be very low on the totem pole at a large firm. And this isn't to knock those folks, but it's to say that we're talking about changing the way systems function so that we can get outcomes that allow more and widespread opportunity for folks who deserve it, people typically on the margins. And so in our engagement work, led by Rona Rose, I'll give her another shout out, and Jazz, who's back there, who works on our engagement studio team, got a chance to take what we learned from the landscape and really create ideas with the support of our Equity Innovation Studio, ideas for what engagement could look like that would help improve your pipeline of folks coming into AgLaunch so that those services got to the places that they needed to be. So that, that we were talking to more Black farmers about how this could benefit them. Because to your point, trust. We all know the legacy of agriculture in the United States, and it is a very, very uncomfortable reality. And so to even be in the space where you're acknowledging that this change work can happen, we can't actually do innovation work in agriculture without engaging Black farmers and brown farmers and women farmers, I think is a testament to your leadership, but also a testament to the challenges that we face, okay? And so it takes folks who have proximity, who understand those lived experiences, who can engage folks where they are to establish trust, to invite them into a space where they can get the type of services that can help them grow their work. So at the heart of our engagement strategy was that thinking, that philosophy. And one of the things we were able to do tangibly, albeit it was during the pandemic, so it was an awful challenge, but needless to say, one that we took head on was to have an HBCU summit that was more successful than we could have imagined, to really start engaging some of these programs where they're training up the next generation of farmers. As y'all know, a majority of the HBCUs in the country and primarily in the South are land grant institutions. And so a lot of them have agricultural programs to help develop the next generation of farmers. And so we were able to open the door there and start to build those relationships. And we're excited about next year's summit and the additional engagement that we're going to do together. All right, so we're going to get to questions and answer here real quick, but I got a few questions for Pete that I wanted to run by just to get a little bit more depth of what we've been doing together and why we're doing it. This is Pete, but y'all may not know Pete as well as I do, but in his heart, he's a Southern preacher. So I'm fully expecting him to bring the house down in these next couple of questions before we get to question and answer. And so we're here because we're reimagining innovation and we're talking social innovation. At the core of AgLaunch is much more than just the accelerator. It's much more than the farmers who are putting up their acreage, and it's much more than the pipeline of future farmers that you're engaging for work. At the core of it is challenging systems that have shut out smaller farmers. It is thinking differently and creatively, having audacious goals about how we level the playing field, so to speak. And you are bringing to the forefront really unique ways in thinking about that. You're actually thinking about technology. Jade mentioned in the video, blockchain, right, as a piece of the puzzle. Obviously, you're raising money, but you're raising money from sources that are a bit more neutral, government dollars, nonprofit dollars, to give you a different level of flexibility. Those all represent challenges too. So can you talk to us about how you came to this spirit of an audacious goal and what you ultimately want the impact of AgLaunch's work to be?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go on the history, go a bunch of different directions. Let's back up to the history for a minute and we'll start there. So I live in Memphis. Memphis was created, the entire town. I sort of make the equivalent of like Philadelphia. A little bit of BS, but at least they said city of brotherly love and all that. Memphis, let's find a good place up high on a bluff that won't flood, that we can build a town to cut all the trees down and grow cotton and ship it in and out and enslave people. That was the whole purpose. There was no anybody that acts like you could polish it up better than that. That was the whole history of the town. I think, as everybody knows, we even indexed the dollar for a while, not to gold, but to cotton, in the way we thought about global trade. And the people of Memphis literally thought when the South was seceding that Manhattan was going to secede with them, and might have if the Brits and poor people, frankly, stopped using U.S. cotton in the mills. And I think probably everybody knows that history. A lot of people actually died from that. So we have this legacy. It's not an abstract thing. It's a real thing. What it means for us in the Delta is that we just work around it. There might be these little buttons here or there, whatever, but we make up a bunch of silly stuff in Memphis to be the innovative hub of, while we leave this asset we have. So I won't even list them all because I don't want to offend any of my Memphis but like we list out a new thing every, you get the plan and everybody that are just crazy. We never go back to going, we've got the logistics, and this applies to Little Rock, our overall we have the logistics, we have the water, we have good soil, and what we have that everybody think about innovation, what do you have to do it? Big corporate partners, big universities. We don't have that. We're the outpost. There's like 250 food companies and ag companies in Memphis. They're all the outposts. They're there for cheap labor, mainly people call it water, logistics. We don't have anybody telling us we can't. So this region between here and Memphis and the rest of the Delta may be the only region in the world that's fully developed, has the logistics, has excess infrastructure, and nobody's telling us what we can do. So that was just a way to get to the how we got here, but I wanted to so one, we're doing is we're owning that. Like, we're just calling, I mean, like, that's not good. If any legacy of that is fundamentally not good. So this is not an abstract thing for us when we talk about ownership. So then meanwhile, in the ag industry, if you guys know that it's, you know, big tech's now coming in, it was big granary. So like in our region, everything we grow gets exported out. Then we bring it back into Jonesboro and all that. So we're actually held hostage by all the big companies. We don't do it. Even if you love number 2 corn or soybeans, you'll never produce it in our part of the South because you can ship it out on the river so cheap. So we're in this position, nobody's owning the legacy, and we're held hostage by everybody outside of us that all we're supplying is the farmland, the cheap labor and all that stuff. And so the idea is, let's just break all that up, but we're not starting from scratch. We've got resources we can build in. And so what does that allow us to do? And I'll stop here, but that allows us to think, Hallie's here because it was rained, right? I mean, y'all can't do anything or, okay. So like I drove around our region twice in the last 3 weeks with all the rain. There wasn't a piece of farm equipment moving. You think the big tractors and all that? So autonomous vehicles, we need them. We're going to have them. Climate change, we won't be able to grow stuff without them. You'll never get them from the big people that are growing the big companies. It doesn't fit in their business model at all. That ought to be a place that we can play and play differently because we're not starting from scratch with farming, but nobody's telling us we can't. I'm just gonna use that as an example. I don't remember what the question was and that wasn't quite the problem. Yeah. If you want to refine or ask me anything else specific about that.
Big ag, you're looking to disrupt big ag.
Yeah, but this gets
how
to
you
like,
doing it?
Yeah,
what do you expect to be the impact?
Yeah, I just call it physics, just for the sake of not physics. I went to class, but just understanding what the problem is and how to think about the problem and how to work to that problem. We're so held hostage, all of us mentally, from we're in a box of here's how it's supposed to work or has to work. Sometimes we can't even see, you know, where whatever the frog or the crab in the water that's boiling or whatever. So I didn't script this because you're here, Hallie, also farmer and a big climate change advocate for being aware of that and changing it and all that, which is also an anomaly and maybe why you're with us. But we're in crisis. You can see it with Coke, but food, we need it. It needs especially food deserts, but we now have a lot more food deserts than we had even in wealthy areas because of the supply chain. We have to have good food that's nutrient dense. We have to reduce the amount of chemicals and the climate GHG emission stuff from the way we produce food in other industries. Those are imperatives. And I feel like this audience is probably aware, like these are not abstract 2050 things. 2050 is what they keep throwing it, so nobody will be, but like if you're in a state of contentment, you should not be. A lot of people are in a state of contentment. We are not. So it's an imperative. Literally, I'm telling you, I don't know how many billions, equipment was not even moving to plant our food for 3-week periods at a time, all the way up until last week. And we could be planting it if we had equipment that would do it. Or we're eating a bunch of stuff that has harmful chemicals sprayed on it. Why? We don't do that to our bodies anymore. We use probiotics and we use biology and all that stuff. So where ag, we believe, is going, and I'll try to, if I'm geek, is everybody good with this, by the way? So you go to the future, there's 32,000 potential plants that we could grow that we've identified that have a nutrient or a health benefit. The globe exists on 6. And then depending on what region, you have maybe your other dozen that are sort of your local things or whatever, and some vegetables if you're rich like us and we all get good vegetables and fruits. Most of the world doesn't have that luxury. There's 32,000 potential plants. We could be the best in the world at scaling those plants and identifying those for markets and building companies around those. There's no doubt that we're going to have biology-based interventions. So you think the easiest one would be think about that, you know, I have an aphid on a tomato plant, so I use a ladybug. We're going to do that with biology on all things. You will be targeting things based on biology, and you'll use, just like now we use chemotherapy or other things as a last case intervention. We'll be using synthetic chemicals only when you have to at last resort, but the system will be based on biology. Everybody track with me? Can everybody picture chemical in a box that you then ship and it can sit somewhere in Helena, Arkansas and be shipped everywhere? That won't work with biology. Now you got to picture a bunch of small regional companies. This one has the ladybugs. This one has the fusarium, blah, 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 all over making stuff in communities. The big companies will never do that. It disrupts their model. They won't be able to make the small autonomous vehicles. They'll use autonomy to drive big tractors. So you get rid of a tractor driver, which is actually a pretty decent job, not disrupt how we plant and harvest the crops. They won't bring biology to the table. I'll give you a specific example. When Bayer and Monsanto, big merger, huge merger. And if you go back and look at it, why? To drive innovation. It's going to be better value to the farmer. We're going to be able to bring the next generation solution. The only big announcement that they've made, and I hope I don't get sued, somebody correct me if they know different, so that the only big announcement that I'm aware of, I'll put it that way, is a synthetic herbicide that'll be out in about 10 years from now. So that's what the industry will bring us. We have this unique advantage if we can think about it and be thoughtful, the physics, what is our real opportunity? We can do anything we want here. We're not subject to any of that because Bayer, who everybody wants to recruit their headquarters to a Memphis or to a Little Rock, I don't want that here. We don't have to, we can build our own, which are going to be a lot more interesting companies that actually think about how this all works. So I might have geeked you out too much, but there's maybe a thought of why this is an opportunity.
Well, we're going to open up for questions here in just a second. I wanted to have us both take a second and offer some advice to the entrepreneurs in the room. What I appreciate about the ways you've answered the questions, I've tried to ask the big question because I know that your knowledge base is just incredibly deep. And I think it says a lot about you as an entrepreneur, is that how vested you are in the work, how expertly you understand the problem, and how complex though the work will be sometimes, you're committed to navigating that complexity. And so you built a team around you, and sometimes it's challenging for us to trust our team, right? To be able to help us execute, but you got to share the responsibility of the work. And that's gonna be part of my advice to entrepreneurs. But let's take from where you what you've shared and let's offer just a couple points of advice from your experience, from your having built AgLaunch, from your having started in the agricultural space. What would be the two things that you would share with the entrepreneurs in the room as they are on their entrepreneurial journey?
Is everybody with my Southern, everybody track on me pretty we can talk. Everybody good? Okay. One is I can't give advice to an entrepreneur, and I don't mean this in any disrespect, that's a house flipper. My wife, sometimes when we look at our bank account, would probably wish I was more that way. There's a class of entrepreneurs, they just see an opportunity. It's almost neutral. And I'm not saying they're bad or good or anything, but oh, this is a poor housing market. I can buy these houses. I'll polish them up and flip them. Oh, Bayer needs this thing. And it's a new way to look at RNAi. And I can take this from the lab and I can add a little bit and move it over there. I don't know how to advise to that. That is an interesting skill set and people make a ton of money. The kind of entrepreneur I am, and the only good examples I'm not going to list are all kind of narcissistic assholes. So I'm not going to list them as examples. I believe in the thing we're building, which is a changed universe that looks like the kingdom of God, where people can eat and they're taken care of, and I will not stop. It has actually been surprising to me that there's now employees and we get to do this cool stuff we get to do, because I'd be like 96 still going, man, we're gonna have clean, whatever. I'm committed. I'm all in to building a thing that nobody sees. That's the kind of entrepreneurship. So what I would say is, if you see the thing nobody sees and you believe it's of God and right, and however you define that, go for it, keep pushing. All the rest of this kind of doesn't matter. And the trends and who does the hot thing and what the state funds, none of that matters. It just doesn't matter. This one, can I do the next? The second one, and this is the problem I've had with my team that we're catching up with. There's not a term or an instrument that we're using right now that'll probably exist in 20 years. I'm just going to use venture capital. So I have to walk around as somebody that doesn't believe in it the way that it's been used. I'm going to seed this out and use all you guys and get 100 things. I'll give you a little bit of money to weed your one deal out. And I'm going to value this up so that about 10 people that are in a network. I was in a conversation this week with a billionaire that somebody on his board, he's deep in, I won't even say what venture capital. It's a club. Let's don't pretend it's not. You get invited in to invest and they're looking for huge 100x returns and they're sending an aftermath. I was over in Bentonville. I'll say this one. I was in Bentonville. Again, I probably shouldn't say the group. A group that goes around peddling their services, give us $2 million a year to come run your program. We'll run your program, entrepreneurship, the myth, blah, blah, blah. And they're representing global investors. And what they're doing is getting the state or the Waltons or people in Memphis to pay their due diligence to give money to these folks. I don't believe any of that. And so the problem I've had in general is venture capital, the way I'm using it is, it's a way of organizing capital to help bright people move something that are trying to change the world. We'll change the name eventually. We're constantly morphing, but every one of these things are just a proxy for what will be. And I'm gonna give a farmer network. Right now, we're piddling around with this little LLC thing. How it's gonna look in 10 years, it's probably tokenized, and every contribution of every farmer, we're realizing in real time, tied to the exact deal. It's all sped up. In the LLC thing, hopefully we're building that it is a platform to the next thing, but there's not a damn thing that I'm working on that I actually believe in the term and the way. These are placeholders for this bigger thing that we're all kind of building and growing towards. So I don't know if that helps. So I would just, well, I will give you one of the examples. I was talking to a woman who spun out of Google, a really cool company. It's an investable company. And she was talking about in Silicon Valley, she was having more trouble even with these men, which is astounding because they're not easy to deal with the women entrepreneurs and our theory, or women venture capitalists in that Bay Area. And our theory was, oh, they actually believe in venture capitalists. They've drank the sauce from these white guys that probably don't believe it's a method for them to extract. I mean, that's my view of it. And so they actually believe it versus I think most of us we're calling it those terms, but we believe in a little more equitable situation and a little more outcomes based that isn't just driven on, doesn't really matter what you do, Facebook. We all knew this was coming 15 years ago. We all knew the data, but like, you're an idiot if you didn't understand that. And we didn't care. It was like, oh, whatever. And so why somebody's smart and extracting. So all of that, it just is an interesting place to be in, but knowing where we sit in the universe, I think is important, and trusting. I mean, this is the hardest thing. So I live in a poor neighborhood and mainly people of color kids. And the best way that they're treated is, hey, maybe you can like stay out of jail and go work at FedEx. And I'm like, listen, you know better, especially on food access. I don't care how big a foundation, Walton Gates, whatever, you know better the keys on how to open this than anybody on the planet because you're in the middle of it. Don't let them use a bunch of terms and gatekeeping, like all that's bullshit. If you're in it for goodwill, you're going to be explaining none of this is that hard. These terms are all being used by a bunch of pompous people to like position, but get your physics right. By physics, I mean, understand the landscape. One other advice is make sure you understand what is your reading regimen. How are you taking in information? I'll tell you how I do it real quick. I'm just going to end with this is because I'm not the president. I'm not making decisions every 2 days, right? That have global. So read The Economist once a week. Just skim the front, read the articles you need. Don't dig in it. Read the New York Times only once a week. Maybe get the Sunday one and drag it out for a couple of weeks and skip a week. Do those two things. I'm just using as an example, and get your reading list coming in from 2 or 3 mentors that aren't who you would assume, but could be your grandma, could be whoever, but what to read, make sure it's very diverse. There should be some history in there. There should be all that. If you just do that, plug your own ones in, cut off the feeds, cut off whatever everybody else is doing, you'll be light years ahead in your thinking just with that. So whatever your reading regimen is, that'd be my last advice. Just get it right. But it should just be simple. It should fit in your kind of cadence. And you are going to be light years ahead because you're going to take your brain, which is superior, and you're going to apply it to now a little bit more of a landscape of what's going on. And you'll see where you fit in that and you'll make the connections and all that. But this whole, like, we're just feeding on, we're chasing the cheese, most of us, most of the time. And it's not necessary. So
that's good. I appreciate that. We're going to get to questions. I'll share just a couple pieces. The reading regimen, I'm going to put that one in my back pocket too, because we can always improve, especially in the age of misinformation. What we're consuming in terms of data information is going to be critical to our work. I would offer a couple of things. I'm just grateful I get to have beers with him every now and again and learn way more than I ever probably need to know about agriculture. But it's inspiring because in our work, we serve people. So we have to be mindful of the impact of our work. We're obviously in business to make money, but the making money is to sustain the business. We talked about success yesterday, me and my team did. And for us, success isn't, making $2 million in a year. That's a goal, right? Success isn't, having 20 clients and renewing. Those are goals. But success for us is to keep going, is to be here tomorrow to serve another client, be here tomorrow to have more impact, to be here tomorrow to make sure that, folks are earning and can buy a home and can put their kids through school and can be and live debt free. That for us is success. And I think about it because I wonder who will succeed me. And I think that's the one piece of advice I would share. I came into this year, this is the 5th year of TR's existence. And when I started, we all do our 3 to 5 to 10 year plans, but you don't know how it's going to look, right? None of us knew we were going to run into a pandemic in 2017. We maybe thought like we didn't, that something bad was going to happen because 2016 happened, but I won't go there. But none of us knew what it would look like. So to have navigated that is both a blessing, but also those challenges have presented opportunities. So what I have come into this year, this 5th year of TR's existence with the goal to do is to finish the business. We started the business, but no one ever taught me how to finish the business. And so I had to define it for myself. And I think everyone does, BK's in the room. He started a number of businesses. This is Bruin K. Simmons. He's one of my partners on our nonprofit side. He started a business and he's had a successful exit. For him, that was finishing the business. For me, finishing the business means that I have worn a lot of hats at Think Rubix. I've worn the marketing hat, the business development hat, the operations hat, all the hats. But your business won't be successful if you're wearing all the hats. You have to share the responsibility in ways that make a lot of sense, obviously, for the economics. Finishing the business is literally taking off the hats and charging that responsibility with folks that you can trust to do the work, who are interested, able, and committed to it, to the point where you're no longer wearing any hats, to build that business outside of yourself. So I challenge the entrepreneurs in the room to imagine what is the work that you're doing look like if you weren't doing it anymore. Build it outside of you, right? Because what we need more of, in my opinion, is entrepreneurs who build strong businesses and create opportunity and create jobs and continue to do that, right? Beyond being an entrepreneur is to be enterprising. Entrepreneurs have to finish businesses to stay an entrepreneur, okay? So that'd be my little tidbit of advice. And don't worry about money. There's tons of it out there. Go get it, know what you need, but really think about the power of your work, the influence of it, and the sustainability of it. All right, so with that, I think we should open up for some questions.
Can I say something about money? Because I appreciate you saying that. We're in this illusion, and I hear it all the time. It's actually good business to be selective on who you're going to put money to. So if you're raising money, you should be able to think out, in my business, I'll need Cultivian capital when I get to Series B. I should be friends with them now in a cool way by letting them know what we're doing. You can work. That's not difficult, but you should also think who you're saying no to. Especially in the early days, that was very difficult because as we started getting traction, big companies want to give us money. My life would be so much. I'm doing grant reporting instead of like being able to easily buy beers for everybody with money from a big company. But knowing and being selective about that, but that myth of scarcity is, again, like I said, I had a myth of talent scarcity. Right? So I went out and did something because I'm in a panic. Well, like if whatever we want to call it, the good spirit, Lord, whatever's in it, so the scarcity thing, I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
Curiosity is the other one that we didn't talk about, but curiosity is the main thing.
Yep. To do that. Yeah. Oh, good deal. Yes. Ali tried to tell me that, so I will do that. All right, so how much time, Pamela, do we have for questions? Oh, great. So let's like do 30 seconds and a response or so.
30-second response too?
Maybe
Can
not.
we do that? We should make bets.
Let's try to fit as many questions as we can, and we'll go from here across the room. Yes, sir. If you don't mind also sharing your name with us.
Yeah, it's Tristan. I'm a tech.
Okay.
I'm from the Arkansas.
Yeah.
So, I mentioned early on in comments that big ag is subject to a very tenuous business model. This is not a subject. It's a pretty significant change. And, you know, big ag is, you seem like a very decentralized figure. You sort of think powers really become decentralized. Sounds like
I think that's right.
big ag is pretty different than the last half century. It's actually consolidated to thousands of acres on a big farm. Farming, farmers don't own 20,000 acres. So it's actually gone the other direction. And all of that's propped up by a subsidy system that pays farmers to not plant for that it exposed to chemicals. Right? So how do you see that really changing every time? It almost seems like it's now issue. It seems pretty broken.
Yeah.
We're so dependent.
Yeah.
Repeat the question. For
Okay.
folks
Yeah.
on
The question was, if we're going to disrupt big ag, that seems very a high bar, especially on the farm side. That a lot of farms are getting consolidated. The big ag companies are consolidating. So I've got a couple quick. This is 30-second round. One is on the big company side. If you are processing huge amounts of soybeans, corn, or other things, at whatever the margin in, let's say it's 5%. That's not what consumers want. They want segregated products. Again, you can go in Walmart. So the market is moving away from commoditizing it the way we do. So that makes an interesting dynamic, or at least just like any other disruption. If it was easy, we would just do it. So that, you got the linebacker, maybe I got a little hole right there. On the farm side, what I'll say is there's numbers different here than in places like Brazil, where the farms are literally 100,000. You could picture how that works. A bunch of discussion there. But in the U.S., and Hallie, correct me if you've got a different perspective on this, we may be hitting the limits of economy of scale for a couple of reasons. There's not big contiguous acres. So now you're moving, are y'all following me? If you had a big block, you would go, if I've got 100,000 and I get 200,000 acres, that'll be easier. I can share equipment. If that 100,000 is one place and you got 10 over here and over there. So there's actually models are showing there's a limit to that economy of scale. That is, I believe, will be exacerbated by the fact that I believe that markets are going to move away from how we're producing currently. So we're going to produce corn. It's a C4 plant. That means photosynthetic works really well. We produce, but we're going to be growing a lot of different kinds of corn, which is going to require farming different ways. So that actually didn't answer your question. I'm going to try to be brief, but those are and I think you're also right about a network effect with different kinds of farms. Power of that's yet to be realized, early days, but there is some interest. Well, I'm going to give you one other dynamic real quick. This has some applicability to other industries, but everybody knows the crossing the chasm model. We're not, okay. So in agriculture, the early farmers, the early stage, everybody knows the chart, right? Early stage, you want the early stage. These are the people that'll like camp at Best Buy for 3 weeks. I don't know if people do that anymore, to get like the new thing or whatever, and then ultimately going to drive the cost down. So early stage early adopter farmers are crazier than the Star Trek person that would be camping at Best Buy. Everybody track with me? Most entrepreneurs, even in the ag space, don't know this. So they'll hold up, I got 10 farmers involved. Well, those are the crazy people that be involved in anything, if you know agriculture. Everybody else is more recalcitrant. And so what's never been done is taking the early adopters and getting them to band together. They're all been kind of one-offs. Again, they don't really fit, because you can't go, well, we're just going to get the early adopters in corn. There's like 4 of them, and then there's 5 over here. And so the fact that we're bringing the people willing to try and all that into the same bucket. And I'll end by going, we have we'll use this. There's 400 million arable acres roughly in this country. We think if you get about 2 in a network with the right soil types in the right places, you can bend the rest of it based on how we measure sustainability, how we control the farm data and don't share it the way it's being shared now, and the way we create an attribute-based non-middleman pricing for the outputs. I'll end there. That was the geek part. We could talk about it more, but
Please.
So there's a rumor, and I think it's been substantial. Bill Gates is buying a lot of farmland.
and y'all are gonna get me. I'm on tape saying all kinds of crazy stuff now, man. Shit, dude. I mean, right now it looks like nothing because when you talk to him, he's at 250,000 acres plus or minus. Again, on the video, I don't know what I'm talking about. Don't sue me. That's what I think based on what I've read. So it's 250,000 acres where one of the biggest landowners, maybe the biggest one, arable farming. And my pet peeve on that is we have to watch Bill's Brain documentaries and you have this chance, you have 250,000 acres, you own it. That's fine. We can talk about equity and farm ownership. We can talk about what's happened with black farmers and the fact that they've gotten screwed in some of that land. We can talk about all that, but let's just pretend that didn't exist. Just go, you got 250,000 acres. You're supposed to be the climate change guru and the smartest guy that we have to watch Bill's Brain. And he's not doing shit with it in terms of regenerative and figuring that out. When you hear him talk about it, it's just in my asset class view. It's just an asset class. And so I obviously, if you're not picking it up, do not like that kind of thinking period from anybody. So that's how I think about it. So, but he is buying land all over the place. There's a big farm in Louisiana and all that. And so I'm really gonna get some arrows in me now. You're gonna like, and TR formally is divorcing themselves from AgLaunch.
We got you. That's why we got issues management. We're gonna do message development, all the that's right.
There you go.
You're safe.
Actually, yeah, I'm a client for life, for real.
So let's work our way. I got a hand right here from.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, but Wendell, were you up?
We were still an educator in the making space as well. Mention how you're what you are now will be different from years from now. What do you see with ag education? What are opportunities in your opinion that K-12 and higher ed now to be prepared for that 20 years?
Everybody understand the question? What to do now to improve, to help in ag or food education, K through 12, and moving forward. Right. In ag, okay. Well, in general, see, I just apply ag to other things. For ag, what I would say is in ag education, you either have the people that I would say I'm kind of more like the hippies or whatever that are like, no chemicals, there's this utopic dream, organic, or you got the ag people, biotech and chemicals all the way. It's a mixture. And so making sure that sits in how we're thinking about it. I'm sure there's applicability in other industries. And then I think, again, I think we're not doing kids a service if we're only a feeder into jobs and diplomas. I'll just leave in that we're thinking, again, starting with valuing the mind and that we have a high expectation that there are game changers all around us. And not that we're just trying to get to a diploma or a job. All good things and important things. And that didn't, we'll talk more about that. Those are thoughts, but there's.
Sounds like we've got to give the future more than just a job. We've got to give them an opportunity to be innovators and creators. Do we have time for one last question? I think we've got one from Bjorn over here. We have 3 minutes left, so we'll keep it quick.
I'm curious about, across the country, seeing rural migration. Stories that tell.
Right.
How is AgLaunch working with those rural areas to motivate people to stay with the business and successful?
You want to close?
That's a great ongoing question. It's double interesting because there's this now migration of tech people and others. Oh, okay. The question is, we've had traditionally a rural migration out of rural communities into the urban center. How do we think about that in terms of encouraging around this ag and food sort of industry or whatever? So it's doubly interesting that you have all these rich people now moving back because they want to telecommute or quality of life into the rural. So now it's like a double twist going on. And so the way we don't have a big, huge, the couple things we're doing is trying to band together small communities of different backgrounds across the country to exchange best practices on how to just like ratchet these pieces up. And the easy one, like you're going to have some kind of brewery. You're going to have some local food kitchen stuff. This tech stuff is for real. You're going to be better working on the rural in terms of working on these technologies with big feedback loops and all that stuff than you would. It's trying to tell that story and just banding folks together around that. Is as far as we've got. And there's a lot, again, like the education to talk about that. I've also got, as you can probably tell, very strong feelings about what's happened historically with land and other things. So I'll leave it at that. Similar to in my neighborhood, all the white people left 40 years ago after Dr. King was assassinated. Then now they're coming back to invest that it's slightly cool and it's gentrifying. That also bothers me on the rural side because we've made it untenable, especially for people of color in the South. The best job you're gonna get is at Tyson or something. And so anybody that for right reason, even more reason than just like, I don't want to live, have left, why I believe there's like game-changing opportunities if we can create the right thing. So more, again, sorry to punt on both those, but we talk more about them.
We'll have time after we wrap to mingle and chat some more, and I hope that everyone sticks around to do just that. I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Reed to close us out, but before she says anything, we probably should have had some pre-work. Anybody know the story of Percy Schmeiser? Okay, so I got a chance to watch this movie called Percy versus Goliath. That honestly was a great intro to what we've been discussing around the challenges in agriculture. So I would say as some homework, check out the film. It's a great one. It's great for a Friday night flick. Percy versus Goliath. It'll create a bit more context about the conversation we've had today, and hopefully inspire you all to get active in the agricultural revolution. So I'd like to say thank you to Pete. Thank you to you all for being here with us, and turn this over to Ms. Reed.
Yeah, you pretty much just said it all. Social innovation. So you can see it at work. We've seen Think Rubix, Tristan Wilkerson helped Pete Nelson with AgLaunch. And so looking forward to hear more about what social innovation is from both of your organizations. And today's been a great session. I appreciate everybody for coming out, and to the people online. We look forward to seeing you again. Next week, we are hosting the third part of our leadership series called Scaling Your Business, called Scale Leadership as You Scale Your Business with Pete Holscher of Lead Higher Learning. And so come back and join us, and we look forward to seeing you all again. Have a great day.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.